be on the 15th, because it'd be two, one, two, three. Yesterday was the first. Yeah, it'll be September 15th.
Bring the ladies out, have some bells, we're going to have a big celebration.
All right, good.
It's 5 o'clock. Are you guys ready to get going? Hopefully you can all...
Recording in progress.
So I apologize, I'm not there in person. I have a wonderful case of bronchitis. So doctor told me I was contagious and needed to stay home. So I'm obeying doctor's orders and I'm home. So we're going to try this hybrid method. We have a couple of pre-agenda items. We had an invocation by Alex Wilkie at our 4 o'clock work meeting and our pledge there. So we'll just jump right into our pre-agenda items. So we have a proclamation, the Daughters of the American Revolution, Valerie King, that I'm going to read. And it says, whereas September 17th, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Michelle Randall, Mayor, along with the City Council of the City of St. George, Utah, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week in the City of St. George, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. And I've asked Christina to let Jimmy present the proclamation to Valerie and whoever is with Valerie. And if Valerie, if you want to say a couple words and talk about Constitution Day.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Randall. You know I would. And you did pretty good considering you have bronchitis. So thank you, City of St. George, for your commitment to once again observe Constitution Week through the issuance of this proclamation. And I'm very proud to announce that this 234th birthday of our Constitution will be celebrated in grand style here in St. George with a public event that will be held on the steps of one of our most historic buildings, Pioneer Courthouse. The celebration will take place on September 17th. Of course, you all are invited. And this is the day after 100 days of what they call intense conversation and deliberation. Our Constitution was signed by 39 men at approximately 4 p.m. at the Pennsylvania State House, which is now known as Independence Hall. Of course, everyone is invited to meet with us at 1:30 at this very special patriotic event that will conclude with bell ringing at 2 p.m. Why 2 p.m.? We're Mountain Standard Time. Pennsylvania is 4 p.m. And we will join fellow patriots all across the nation who will be doing exactly the same activity best known as Bells Across America. When the city event was first conceived a few weeks ago with the full support of Mayor Randall, it has since morphed into similar celebrations that are being organized all throughout Washington County. So, yay for the patriotism of Washington County. And so while we are doing ours in St. George, Hurricane, Ivins, Santa Clara, and Washington will be bell ringing simultaneously with the rest of us. And I have to put a plug in for United We Pledge, a very patriotic organization. that we've partnered with that help coordinate all of these activities. So for those who are unable to attend, we still invite you to ring your bells like crazy, whether it be in your home, at your office, or in school, in solidarity as we make history in Washington County, southern Utah, achieving one of the finest displays of united patriotism in celebration of our U.S. Constitution. So on behalf of the members of Color Country Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, we again thank you for having us here tonight to accept this proclamation observing Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd. And we have a poster for you to display. All right, we'll trade.
Dave will take a picture right here. I'll hold it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Valerie, can I ask you, are there going to be signs out in the area so people we're going to have a lot of people in town that day for the Ironman, so it would be fun for them to know what's going on and maybe they'll want to participate.
Yes, United We Pledge will have a PR campaign, but we'll also advertise it as best we can, and some of our media folks. So just come out and join us, everyone. Bring your bell, but we're going to have some bells, but bring a bell. You have a bell on your phone, that works. Did I answer the question? Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. And we have another proclamation. This is for the Dixie Elks, and it is Patriotism Week, so it kind of fits right in with Constitution Week. Whereas the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, through its constitution, is a patriotic order, and whereas the order promotes the ideals that the citizens of this nation live in freedom, won through the great sacrifices and many tribulations, which has provided the foundation for a free, prosperous, and independent life. And whereas we realize that each generation must work to maintain this freedom, otherwise, though carelessness or indifference, the rights and liberties enjoyed may vanish. And whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize this freedom and to honor this nation which provides it. Now, therefore, I, Michelle Randall, Mayor, along with the City Council of the City of St. George, Utah, do hereby proclaim the week of September 6th through the 12th, 2021 as Patriotism Week in the City of St. George, and ask our citizens to join the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks in expressing gratitude for the privilege of American citizenship with appropriate celebrations and observances. And I've asked if Brian could give this proclamation to the Elks Club, if they want to come forward and say anything about this proclamation to accept it.
Thank you, Mayor Randall and council members. My name is Sharon Getzman. I am the exalted ruler of St. George Dixie Elks, and along with my fellow officers, we're here in support of Patriotism Week and Patriot Day on September 11th. The purpose of the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks is to promote and practice the four cardinal principles of charity, justice, brotherly love, and fidelity, and to promote the welfare and enhance the happiness of its members, and very specifically at this time, to quicken the spirit of American patriotism. So the Dixie Elks fully support Patriotism Week, and our national flag is first in our hearts as loyal Elks. Some of the activities that we are promoting during the next week is we're reaching out to our local schools with American essay contests that go out to our 5th and through 8th graders. And this year, the theme for our essay contest is, what does it mean to love your country? And of course, on September 11th, we are having a special ceremony with our Boy Scouts and the troop leaders. lowering of the flag to half-mast. Some of the other activities that we do throughout the year is we participate in a grand ceremony for Flag Day, and along with our ELK members and officers and our Boy Scouts, we do a beautiful flag retirement ceremony. So we're here, and thank you for supporting Patriotism Week, and thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you, Sharon.
Get on the other side, please. You guys move this way.
Oh, he's so bossy.
Okay?
This is what I
You
live
guys
with.
come in.
Thank you for all you do.
While Brian's walking back up to his seat, I want to say that on September 11th, the city of St. George is having a commemoration of September 11th, where it's the 20th anniversary. And that program, the actual program will start at 10, but there will be some things happening at 9:30 at Town Square. Public's invited to attend, and we will be honoring our first responders here locally. So I wanted to mention that since Sharon brought up September 11th. Our hospital administrator, Mitch Cloward, and Terry Draper, I think are in the audience. I can't see them, but I'm assuming they're there. And we'll turn some time over to them to give us their annual update on St. George Regional Hospital.
Thank you for the time. We always enjoy our annual hospital updates, so I'll share with you what's happening at our hospital today, in fact. So I've got some slides. I'm not sure how to display those here.
I think if you share the screen down at the bottom, you should be able to pull up the presentation.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mark.
There you go. Now go back to Zoom right here. You click on that, and then click share screen. Oh, okay. Hold on. We're going to enable you. Give me just 1 second. Just a moment.
Gotta love technology.
Absolutely. Apparently, I need to be enabled.
Do you karaoke, Mitch? You could sing us a song.
No.
Just go ahead and do your presentation.
Okay. Promise not to be too long. Mark and I have Snow Canyon mountain bike team practice tonight, so we got to get there. All right, we want to thank the community for everything the community has done last year and this year to keep each other and ourselves safe and protected from this virus. We think there's more we can all do. Unfortunately, we find ourselves still in the midst of this pandemic, and I want to just share with you a glimpse of what I saw this morning. Every morning at 6 o'clock a.m., I get a snapshot of our hospital census, and so this is what I saw this morning. At the bottom, you can see we have 298 patients in our hospital. We have 284 licensed beds. We can flex up to 322 beds, 332 beds if we use some of our outpatient areas. We're short 12 nurses and 8 patient care techs this morning, and we had 73 COVID patients that we're caring for. And if you look at where those COVID patients are in our hospital. We have West 4. That has historically been where we put our patients who have had knee surgery or back surgery or shoulder surgery. And now all 32 beds are used to care for COVID patients who are not in the ICU. We have a 32-bed ICU, and 29 of those patients in our ICU are COVID patients. But in total, we're caring for 46 patients in our ICU. We're at 144% capacity in our ICU. That has triggered a request from the Lieutenant Governor to come and visit our hospital tomorrow. Very concerned about what's happening here in St. George. And has specifically requested to take a tour of our ICU to see how we're overflowing into other areas of the hospital. So what this meant today was that 3 people that were scheduled for surgery who've been waiting to have surgery, who after surgery needed an ICU bed, we simply had to cancel their cases. If you're a patient who's suffering from tremendous back pain and you've been waiting for that surgery for a long time, that's not fun to be that person today. It was told, we can't do your surgery. If you are having a heart condition that required heart surgery and you were told, we don't have an ICU bed for after your surgery, that doesn't feel good. If you were the patient in the Kanab hospital this morning that needed to be transferred to our trauma center and we had to say no, that doesn't feel good. We have transitioned from conventional care to the hospital contingency care. That is a concern. And if you were in a rollover on I-15, if you're out recreating and you need ICU care right now, there's a really good chance we're not going to be able to take care of you. You're going to have to fly out. And the problem is a lot of the other hospitals also have ICUs that are full. So this impacts all of us. It's a sobering reminder of what's happening in our hospital. And I'm very concerned about our physicians in our ICU. I'm very concerned about our nurses. And I'm concerned about the impact this is having on our caregivers at our hospital. It's overwhelming. And although they're very resilient, these statistics are sobering, and these are statistics that come from the hospital. If we have one agenda, our agenda is to eradicate COVID, and we're not winning that battle. So this is data from our hospital. On our census, the blue line represents a 7-day average of the number of COVID patients that are in our hospital. So you can see the spike last year, and we're approaching, I think we're just 10 patients off our high from last year. So we're right in the thick of the pandemic again. And then you can see the 7-day trend for our ICU care, and then you can see the trend for patients who unfortunately are dying from COVID. So last week, this is a snapshot of all of the COVID patients we were caring for in our hospital. Each dot represents a person, and they're color-coded. The blue patients that we're caring for were not vaccinated. The tan color are partially vaccinated, and the green ones were fully vaccinated. So you can see that most of the patients in our hospital are in our hospital because they're not vaccinated. These are people, each dot represents a person that has died in our hospital from COVID since December of 2020 through August of this year. 161 people have died from COVID in our hospital. Of those that have died, the blues represent those that were not vaccinated, the tan partially vaccinated, and the 3 green dots were fully vaccinated. We're proponents of vaccination. We all need to think about that for ourselves. We need to think about that for our neighbors and encourage people to get vaccinated, because our hospital statistics clearly point to a clear difference. So our goal and mission is to help people live the healthiest lives possible. We do that. One of the ways we do that is we have a governing board where we have members of our community that help represent our hospital, and they sit on our hospital governing board. So I want to introduce Cindy, who's going to briefly talk about our governing board. But Cindy Gilbert is a corporate, she's an attorney. She's corporate counsel for Utah Iron. That's a newly opened mine west of Cedar City. She's corporate counsel for Gilbert Development, for Crusher Rental and Sales, she and her husband Steve are very interesting people. They own a Diamond G Rodeos where they breed and clone rodeo bucking bulls. She has some interesting hobbies. She was the first female flank person in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, and she's flanked over 20,000 animals. I think that's pretty cool. And then she holds an arena record for the high mark bull ride in the National Finals Rodeo in 2001. So I don't really mess with her. When she wants something, I just simply give it to her. I love Cindy.
It is a pleasure to be here, and I am so grateful. When Mitch called me in about becoming chair of the governing board, I thought he was going to fire me. Barbara Watson, well-renowned in this town and loved and respected, got me on the governing board of the old hospital in 1996, and I've gone back and forth between foundation and governing board since that time. And the changes, the increases that we have done to make this a gem in the desert is something that I'm really proud of, given Bardell's help and so many other people, that being the chairman, all it does is give us a megaphone to tout the successes Mitch and his team have been able to do. As a private company, like he mentioned, we opened the iron mine amidst the pandemic. We shipped our first train of iron ore from Cedar City in October of 2020. We're now up to 85 trains and 18 ships to China and Korea and all over. And try starting a business with a pandemic, especially in a mill where everybody's so close together. You have one person exposed, and it spreads through the entire shift. And so we've really had to try to be proactive. And the last thing that we just recently did, which was pretty helpful, was I hired a pharmacist through Walgreens to come to 3 of our facilities, and they did 40 shots in one day. And answering questions, what we found was a lot of people just didn't have factual basis. They thought it was skewed from social media or from the news or whatever. And what I really like about these charts that have been put together by Dr. Patrick Carroll is those are our statistics, our facts. And when people say, really? That's really where we are? 33% in Iron County and 44% in St. George. It's probably a little different. That was a week ago. But it really changed people where you weren't forcing them to do things, that let them be at choice. And so if I can make a difference in educating people, not twisting their arm or taking away their freedom of liberty, but helping them realize that this isn't just about you, this is about the world we live in, that is a real plus for me. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm a Woodbury by maiden name, so I claim St. George as home, and even though I grew up in Cedar, don't hold that against me. But it has been a real pleasure to be at the hospital, and Mitch and his team, Terry Draper, are heads and tails above everybody else, and we are so well respected wherever we go with the outcomes we have. So thank you for letting us come, and I'll see you 2 more times. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Cindy. You may recognize some members of our hospital board of directors, and Cindy is the chair, as we talked about. There's a lot of growth in the eastern part of the county, and we've met with the mayor and the city council. They would like us to expand services in Hurricane, so we've announced building a new hospital in Hurricane. 4th quarter of next year, we're going to start with an emergency department and some imaging services right there on the same site that our current clinic resides. So this is a rendering of the first phase of our hospital that we will build and occupy by the end of next year. You can just kind of see on the land where the hospital will be located right north of our existing clinic. We're one of the largest trauma centers now in the state of Utah, and we offer comprehensive services there aren't many services we don't offer anymore. It's probably easier to articulate the things we don't do than to try and explain the things that we do. This is data from the trauma registry from the state of Utah. We're a level 2 trauma center, and basically what this data tells us is that if you're critically injured or ill, if you go to a major trauma center, your chances of surviving increase dramatically, or conversely, your chance of dying goes down precipitously as well. And so we're proud to be a major trauma center that serves Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, and all the people that travel here from across the country and world to visit our national parks. We continue to innovate in heart services. This is Ernie. Ernie's 86 years old, and he lives in Mesquite. He had a mitral valve problem in his heart, and his heart was failing. And so we now have a new procedure that our cardiologists can perform. It's a mitral clip that holds your valve together, and so you no longer have to have a big, long incision, and it's a lot less invasive, and the outcomes are very good. So it's done by a catheterization process. And now he's saying that he's going up and down steps without stopping, and it's marvelous. So our ability to place these mitral clips completes our structural heart program at the hospital. We continue to innovate and advance our care. So in addition to heart care, we have pediatricians. You may have noticed that one of the patients in the hospital is on our pediatric unit that has COVID and is receiving full treatment for COVID. That patient is under 11 years old. And so we have a pediatrician in the hospital, and all they do is care for children in the hospital. They don't have an outpatient pediatric practice. And so they play a vital role with our growth in just caring for children in the hospital. And we also have physicians that just care for heart patients in the hospital. They don't have outpatient clinics where they care for heart patients because there's such a need in the hospital. So that's subspecialized care we provide at our hospital. We are renowned for our spine care at our hospital. We have a national contract with an insurance company that's going to be bringing patients from all across the country who need spine surgery at our hospital because our outcomes are good and our cost is a fraction of what they can get it across the country. So we're excited about that. Our hereditary population study, the future of medicine is in sequencing genes and trying to identify genetic variants before the diseases manifest themselves. So our goal is to get ahead of cancer and heart disease, to find those genetic variants that will manifest themselves as disease later on so that we can prevent those things. We have geneticists and scientists working together to get ahead of these diseases. That is, the Center for Cancer Care is here in St. George for all of Intermountain Healthcare. So proud of the work that Lincoln Nadal and our scientists are doing there and our physicians to do our best to get ahead of fighting disease. And then we all need access to healthcare 24/7. We have an app where you can just click a button and be connected to a healthcare provider 24/7. We're proud of some of the recognitions our hospitals received. And one of those is one of the best regional hospitals in the country by U.S. News and World Report. That was given to us for some of our heart care and our orthopedic care and hip and knee replacements. We do a lot of those because we have double the population in our community of people over 65 compared to the state average. So we're really good at hearts and knees and hips. And then we're a not-for-profit healthcare system, and we're very involved in supporting our community partnerships to improve health in our community. That's all I have. Are there any questions for us or the hospital?
Mitch, I'd like to make a comment for you.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to email you and also Terry as well. Yeah. So 1 month ago today, I was in the hospital with my wife, and we were having our first child.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big event for us. My daughter was breech, and so we had a C-section. So we were in the hospital for 3 days, and I've been pretty familiar with the hospital in Intermountain Healthcare because my wife does work there. Yeah. But actually experiencing it in something that was one of the biggest events of my life, I couldn't believe the amount. I was just so impressed from the nurses, the physicians, the social workers, the admin, the anesthesiologist, even the catering, how much they truly cared about me and my wife and my daughter for the 3 days that I was there. I was blown away. I've been in situations where, you're there and people take care of you and things get done. But this was truly I really felt like they cared about me. And I just wanted to express that. It was such a big event for me. And so thanks for all that you're doing in Intermountain Healthcare. Thanks for providing such an amazing care facility here in Southern Utah. It was, experiencing it firsthand was just amazing.
You're welcome, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, Mitch, what's next?
I'm tired. I think the hospital and hurricane is going to require a lot of our attention, and the coordination with the major trauma center here. We're doing a lot to decrease the cost of health care. In January, the hospital is going to offer a more affordable option for surgery, elective surgeries. So that's called an ambulatory surgery center. That's going to cut the price of elective surgeries in half. We're going to open up next year an outpatient imaging center where we can significantly slash the prices on our imaging and radiology procedures. So we're focused on increasing access to healthcare by expanding the hurricane, and we're focused on making healthcare more affordable. And we can't wait to get through this pandemic. We're like you all, we're sick and tired of it.
So is the footprint over on River Road, have you maxed that out, or is there still some available opportunity?
There's still some available opportunity, but I'm concerned because what we didn't anticipate is we have a lot of people coming from Las Vegas to seek hospital care and cancer care, and we didn't account for that kind of growth coming this way. And so I'm meeting with some consultants. We've got to put together a master site plan for the next 10 to 20 years, because as large as our hospital is, I'm concerned about the growth in the future of what we need to continue to do to maintain our reputation.
And the old campus site?
We are, we know that our central utility plant is end of life, and we have a couple of options there. It's to put a new central utility plant in there to support old buildings that need to be retrofitted is a complete red ink disaster. So our goal is to level that campus by the end of 23, and I know there's some non-disclosures going on right now that I can't really speak to, but we have plans for that site. But what we want to do is make sure we work very closely with the city of St. George so that whatever we do enhances that community. I don't want to build another hospital there, but the growth in our community, and you can see the numbers at our hospital, we've got more planning to do for the future. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm sorry if we took a little too long. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mitch, and thanks, Cindy. Adam, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes. There are 7 items on our consent calendar tonight. These have all been reviewed and approved by staff. Staff recommends approval. If you'd like to remove any of these for individual discussion, we're happy to do that as well.
I'd make a motion. Are we ready for that?
Yes.
Mayor? I'd make a motion that we approve the consent calendar items.
Second.
Motion by Greg, seconded by Vardell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 2 is public hearing and approval of the CAPER for our CDBG program, and Jen is going to make this presentation.
Our public comment period was August 13th to September 1st. Staff has not received any comments from the public. The CAPER is essentially going over what we did in the last year with our CDBG funding. So that's what the public hearing is tonight.
Any questions for Jenna before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. And I can't see the audience, so I'm going to close the public hearing because I have a feeling nobody's there to comment on it. And come back to you, council, for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consolidation annual performance evaluation report for the 2020 program year of the Community Development Block Grant.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Danielle. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ready for you, Carol.
Okay, thank you. You disappeared on the screen. All right. And I think hopefully this works. I hit share screen and then I'm hoping. Okay. Item number 3 is to consider approval of a petition to designate a local landmark site for the CV home located or on approximately 0.15 acres located at 274 South, 200 West, to be known as the CV home. And I will go over the staff report on this one. Okay. So the CV home. Here's a map of where it's located at 274 South, 200 West, South downtown area. Some information about the CV home. It does have a historic granary inside the home. It's one of 20 that's listed in the Field Guide to Existing Granaries in 2008, It used to be outside on the back porch, but now it has been enclosed in the house. So that's kind of something historic about this home. And there it is listed on the brochure. Some other information. The home was built in 1938. There has been some additions to the home. For example, the front porch that you see, this is a current picture on the screen right now. So the front porch was added. There was also the granary, as I mentioned, it was enclosed. There were a couple additions to the rear of the home, and also they made a second story inside the home. They didn't expand the roof, they just added that second story. This is a picture of the home in the 1970s. As you can see, the porch was not added at this time, the covered porch on the front of the home. This one is a picture of the home in the 1970s, and this is what it looks like right now. This is the rear of the home. The before picture was taken in the early 2000s, and then the after picture was taken as it looks now. So there were a couple additions. The granary is located in the, I can't use my mouse, it's not working, but it's located in the rear of the property on the right-hand side. And if you're looking at the after picture, you can't really see it because the people are hiding it, but it's over in that area. Here's just some photos of the interior of the home. The second story there, the kitchen. And just going to the criteria, as you remember, there are 3 criteria that need to be met, every one of these. Located in St. George boundaries, yes. Built before 1970, yes. And no major alterations or additions. On this one, it's there has been some alterations. It's up to you to decide whether you feel they are major or not. As I mentioned, the front porch, the granary was enclosed, and then there's 2 additions to the rear of the home. And then of these following 5 criteria, just one needs to be met. On the National Register or associated with events from the state, local, or national level, or associated with a person, or archaeological. It doesn't meet any of those. As far as architecture and construction, it does have an existing granary that is historic to St. George on the property. We did present this to both the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning Commission. Both of them recommended approval. Historic Preservation was a 4-1 vote, and Planning Commission was a 5-1 vote. And then this is the Planning Commission's recommendation that they had. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer if there's anything you want me to go back through. The owner of the home, Simran Chacon, she is here if you have questions for her as well.
Council, any questions for Carol or the applicant?
Carol, do we know what the opposition was? It was one person on both?
Both of them had the same reason. They felt the additions they were significant.
I liked the additions. It looks a lot better.
got just a comment for the homeowner. I love what you're doing with the old home and making it so, just putting so much care and love into it in our downtown area.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I really like that.
I agree. And I loved this letter from Kurt Huffaker that was included. He basically just really said what a wonderful job Cimarron has done with this home. He said, we should all be thankful for the passionate homeowner who was committed to a historic preservation approach to the house. That passion is what I recall from the first site visit, along with the numerous issues with systems, finishes, function, structure, and exterior of the house. There were significant plumbing and electrical issues, along with a tree growing out of the foundation that destabilized the entire house structure. So I just love that he took the time to point out how much time and effort she has put into preserving this home and how expensive it is to preserve these homes and to really put the care into them that you have to. And then he also noted that some people may look at it just because it's smaller and not think it's of architectural high style, but he said it actually is a really fine example of a vernacular cottage from the period. So I loved his letter, and I appreciated him writing that and sharing the good experience he's had with her working so hard to preserve this.
Council, if you don't have any more comments or questions, I'm ready for a motion.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the petition to designate a local landmark site for the CV home located at 274 South 200 West Street to be known as the CV home.
I'll second.
Motion by Bardell, seconded by Danielle. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, and this is to consider approval of an ordinance changing, did that hit? No, there we go. Changing the zone from C4 Central Business District commercial to PDC Planned Development Commercial on approximately 2.03 acres located at 50 North and 200 East. As most of you know, this is the Washington County location, and they are wanting to put in a parking garage. So I'll go through the presentation. Here's an aerial of the location. Here's where they're putting in their new building, and then the parking structure will go actually up in this area. Oops, I think I need to use this. Oh, no, it worked. General plan is public facility for this location. And the general plan, or the zoning, maybe I should use this. There we go. It is C4. As you can see, the building itself, they did change that to PDC before they started building. Here's just a close-up picture, and this is how it looks today. That's according to our aerials. I guess it could be like 6 months old, but this is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to put the new parking structure here that will, of course, hold the parking for the new county building. The details on the parking structure is there will be 353 parking spaces. The building itself, the new county administration building, will be 126,462, which will require 253 spaces. So they definitely will meet their parking requirement with their parking garage. And they also will be using the basement to use for their county fleet vehicles. So that will be blocked off, so the public will not be able to go in there.
Carol, can I ask you about that really quick? So when you say basement, I was looking at it, is that really the ground floor?
It's below.
It is below. Okay, it was hard
below.
for me to tell from the renderings. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so here's some renderings. The one down at the bottom, that's what it will look like facing 200 East Street. And then looking at this side, or Temple Street, I guess is the other name for it. On this bottom one, that's what it'll look like from Tabernacle. However, the existing county building will be in the way. The building itself will be 69 feet 3 inches. And so that obviously is a request on the height because it goes above our requirements. They're doing something unique with this building in that the top floor will remain open for recreational activities. They will be having 6 pickleball courts, and they will be having a track that goes around. In addition, this location up here is a location that they will be able to bring in a portable stage that they'll keep in their storage room, and they'll also be able to have tables and chairs, so they'll be able to host events here either in the evenings or on weekends. There's also a prep kitchen and then some restrooms, and then there's also an elevator for people that need access up to the top. So this is something that's a little bit different than normal. Typically, our garages don't look like this on the top floor, so they're excited about it. Here's the materials board that was presented. Most of the materials are exactly the same as will go on the actual county building. They did need to come up with a use list because they are changing it to a PDC. This is the use list. These are items taken from the commercial district. It's just pretty general, some general items there. Staff didn't have any problem with any of these uses that they picked out. We did present this to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this zone change request. I do believe we have representation here if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over.
Council, any questions for Carol or Commissioner Almquist, who is there as a representative?
I have a question for Commissioner Almquist. Where's the trees? Mr. Tree Lover, where's the trees on top of your parking garage?
That drawing was drawn during the fall, and so the leaves were not on the trees. A couple of things that we want to do is use them around the building. We expanded a couple of the planter areas beyond the normal required footprint so that we could put some trees around the building, plus the entire east side, which has a few dead trees along the parking strip that's existing between sidewalk. There's about a 8-9 foot wide piece of grass there. The grass will come out, and then we're going to put new trees along that side as well, along Temple Street. Between the two buildings, like the Boulevard building that exists and then the parking garage, it's kind of a shade corridor, almost no sunlight. We will have a planter back there, but no trees on that back side. Nobody really sees it. Won't get a lot of bang for the buck there. But on the front side, you saw that elevation that would face Tabernacle. That has some planters along there as well. We're trying to set it inside the block so it's not so ugly. But as you've seen the plan before, where the current administration building is, trying to develop that corner with the Washington County Performing Arts Center. Still don't quite have the votes for that, but certainly that's going to be dolled up with a lot of landscaping and, of course, the trees on the building that's going up now. The administration building has its required street trees there. So to answer your question, they probably didn't draw them, but as long as I'm alive, there will be a tree packed in wherever we can get it.
I figured. I have a couple more questions. Are you worried at all about heat? Is there going to be some sort of heat mitigation for people if they're using those facilities on the roof? You know, most of our pickleball facilities have some sort of little shade structure. I didn't know if that was included or...
It didn't show them there, but we do have some planters for sitting down, and there will be some greenery up there in those planters, not necessarily trees. Good point. We'll have to think about how to put that in there because all of that is temporary because it goes away when you have an event. So we'd have to think, and I think it's doable certainly, to incorporate something like with the lights or the planters, similar to what you have at your pickleball courts out in Little Valley.
Mm-hmm. My only other question was in regards to parking for anything besides cars, and it's maybe more for a city discussion, is just if you're building like a Subway sandwich shop, you have to have 2 parking spaces for bikes. If you're building a giant building like this with giant structure, you have 2 parking spots for bikes. So I'm just wondering if that's a conversation we need to have with the staff. It's not really necessarily to Commissioner Almquist unless he wants to address people showing up at these spaces on bikes or on scooters, and if there's going to be kind of a designated landing spot for those.
We talked about that and feel like we can incorporate it. There's no city ordinance requiring it yet, but it is the wave of the future. We do have some electric charging stations inside the parking structure. If they're for county purposes, which we may have someday, that'd be great. Otherwise, employees will be able to use that. We have on the east side some additional parking spaces. I don't know if we want to show that overhead elevation. That's additional parking on top of the 253 that's required. The 353 inside are certainly meet the requirement, but we have additional outside parking as well that's not in the full count. But I'm sure we could convert some of those areas over. I'm just thinking out loud of where we could use them. I know we do.
It's nice to have a designated spot just so people
Right.
don't show up and dump them,
Right.
around. I mean, they might dump them anyway, but
Yeah.
we'll think positively.
The current admin building on the back side, the drop-off side, which is going to be the northeast section behind it, not the facing first or tab, but behind. I know there's some places in there that we have open for parking there. And then, of course, any employee will be able to park downstairs in the covered parking of the admin building going up now, which there's gobs of room down there because it's hard to negotiate. So we had to design that in such ways that there's big islands of open space. So even a motorcycle, bikes, e-bikes, whatever, could easily fit down in that garage that's also under the building going up now. So.
Would be awesome. The only difference with a bicycle is they'd need something to chain it to because it's so easy to steal. So there'd have to be some sort of post or something for people to park
inside if we're outside, yes. Inside that garage
you're
is
saying that
enclosed
okay.
and it's gated. So I'm sure that, down inside there, it'll be pretty safe for those employees if they bike.
Commissioner, I think that parking garage will complement that arts center very well.
Yeah, we're getting closer. I had a conversation with the mayor of Taylorsville today. Long conversation. It's fun when you talk to mayors. I talked to the CEO and COO. Wears two hats of the Hale Theater. Sandy City is just gaga about that. And West Valley City, they were great to house them for years, but they're happy for the move to Sandy. And the mayor of Taylorsville with the new performing arts center there called Mid-Valley, $47 million project. And Taylorsville was saying just what a great addition to their downtown, which Taylorsville is a new city. Didn't really have a downtown, but now they do. So thanks, Brian. Okay.
Commissioner, I just want to make sure I'm reading the plans right. It looks like you do have restrooms on the top of the building for the event.
Yes,
space.
we do. And so there would be sort of a relief station, Commissioner or Councilmember Larkin, although we don't. Hey, any shade will do in a storm, right, or something like that. But I'm glad that you mentioned the sunshades. They're not expensive, unless you go gangbusters, but I think we could incorporate something like that.
And then the garage will have some type of security, whether it's a gate arm or something that does restrict entry during certain hours overnight, things like that.
Yes, and we've had our consultants come in as to just what that should be. Okay. And we're taking it not to the highest level that maybe they have at the Rayburn building in Washington, D.C. for parking, but not also just maybe an arm. I mean, we're trying to think ahead of the game as far as real security. And all of the jump-through areas that you saw in the parking garage on that first floor, those have a mesh screening. So they also can't just jump into the garage. plus every stall will have a camera. When I say that, doesn't mean that there's 353 cameras, but what it does mean is there's 360-degree cameras in there that will monitor, 8, 10 stalls at a time. So there's good visibility that way as well.
Those are great ideas. We've learned a lot as co-owners of a parking garage, so those are great ideas.
Well, and we're glad you can tell us what to do because we've learned from you. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to charge them for that. Yeah. Thank you. All righty.
Council, if there's no more questions, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion we approve an ordinance changing the zone from C4 Business District Commercial to PDC on approximately 2.03 acres located at 50 North, 200 East Street.
I'll second.
Motion by Greg, seconded by Danielle. This is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote. So start with Bardell.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Sorry about that. Okay, it's been a little while since I've had to share here. This is number 5 is to consider approval of an ordinance amending the Grandview at Green Valley Planned Development Residential Zone for 60 homes to be known as the Flats at Grandview on approximately 9.62 acres, generally located at 1600 West and Skyrocket Road. You can see on your screen the zoning. This was rezoned to PD earlier this year, a PDR and PDC, master planned over the entire area, and I'll go over that here in just very briefly in just a moment, but it is all PD. As for the general plan on this particular property, which is right in this area, is master planned for medium density residential. You can see there's also commercial in the area, but that does not affect the property under question tonight. This is the master plan community that was approved, the PD that was approved back in earlier this year. We're looking at this area right in here that's labeled tiny homes. Now, these tiny homes have turned into not quite as tiny of homes as we initially thought, but they're smaller than a typical home. So I'll go over that here in just a second. And this is a look at kind of where it is on the site. This doesn't show you much. So looking at what was originally approved, you can see this layout. 50 tiny homes were approved in this layout. And this is kind of conceptually what they thought they might look like. Kind of smaller at that point. And they've changed them a little bit, but I'll go over that. That's just the original concept. This is what is being proposed now. They are proposing, so two things. They're proposing approval of this layout, the zone change amendment or the PD amendment. They're also proposing to amend the zone plan itself. The original zone plan allowed for 50 homes in this kind of pod area. They're proposing 60 homes, so they're asking to amend that to add an additional 10 homes. But you can see on this layout kind of the amenity area right in here. They'll have another amenity area down here. And then in here, this kind of striped area, this is hillside, so that'll be left natural and won't be disturbed. All of these homes meet the square footage requirement of the current code. You'll recall that about a month or so ago, we came before you with an amendment to the code. There were some requests to look at that and study that a little bit more. They came forward, the applicant came forward, amended their site plan just to meet the current code. So this meets the code as it is today. with the square footage requirements of at least 900 square feet. Some of them are larger than that. This shows the amenities. They are proposing a pool. They're proposing pickleball courts and a trail system, a cabana, a barbecue area, fire pit, that kind of thing. So they are meeting the requirements for the amenities. And then this is a look at the elevations. These are just the 2D elevations. These are the single-story buildings, two different elevations, and then these are this 2-story. The single-story buildings, I believe, they stand at about 13 feet. Yeah, 13 feet, and then the 2-stories stand at about 22. And this is these are some renderings of the proposed buildings. So, a more modern, flat roofs, all balconies and porches. That's the proposal, and these are the materials that they would use. And so that is their request. The applicant is here, or the representation for the applicant is here. And if you have the Planning Commission heard this, by the way, and they recommended unanimously for approval. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those.
So just so I understand it, there are more units and they are larger. So that comes at what, smaller areas for the amenities? Where does that extra space come from?
They did have to cut into that a little bit. I mean, but the amenities they're still at like 43%. They're required to have 30% landscaping. They're at 43. So it didn't cut into it that much, but yeah, that's where
so parking and all those other things that are significantly important are still...
They're still intact, yep. They're still going to meet their parking requirements. Yep.
Other questions for Dan or the applicant?
I'd just love to hear from the applicant why they didn't stick with the tiny homes that they were originally going to do. I'm just curious, because these aren't tiny homes. These are smaller homes, but they're not tiny homes.
Hi, Adam Allen with American Land Consulting. So we did have some smaller, tinier homes, but they kind of wanted to wait. They were wanting to move forward without waiting for the new ordinance to pass. And so when we went through and did the sizing on like the single-story homes to make it have like a bedroom and a decent little, the one-car garage, and just the bedroom and the areas, they were only about 780 square feet, something like that. So it wasn't a huge jump to go to a little bit bigger. And part of the reason why, as you were saying, like for the amenities and things, is we moved a garage inside and got rid of some outside parking that was covered. And so they're still pretty small, but they kind of wanted to continue to move forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? If there's no questions, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll go ahead with a motion to approve amending the ordinance for the Grandview and Green Valley Plan Development Residential Zone to on approximately 9.62 acres to include the additional 10 units. And what else did we have to do? Is that good? And the new...
And then just amend the PD for the site plan, et cetera.
Perfect. And amend the PD for the site plan.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Bardell. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is a request, excuse me,
To approve a preliminary plat for a 132 lot residential subdivision called South Desert Townhome. Site is located at approximately White Dome Drive and 2500 East in the Southern Hills Development. Number of lots is 132. Density is 9 dwelling units and acre zone is PDR. The applicant is Development Solutions Group. So here's where we are. You saw this recently when they came forward and master planned this area. These are the pods that they were proposing to develop right now. So this is just a preliminary plat that subdivides them. And then there's that. So here's the layout. Here's White Dome Drive here. So north is to the right hand of the page. So they have White Dome Drive here, and their layout is right here. They do have these amenity areas right here in the middle. They are proposing to put like a trail sidewalk through here for their residents to walk through. Their proposal is, if possible, they'd like to eliminate the sidewalk on one side of the road there and use this in lieu of the sidewalk. They felt like maybe that was too many sidewalks plus a trail through the middle. So that was the one request they did ask for. And they are proposing to try to get a trail here on that north side. Right now they exist on the south side, or they don't, but exist, but that's where it was constructed with White Dome Drive. And they're trying to see if they can work out where they continue to extend it on the south side as well as provide it on the north side.
Is that it, Wes?
That's all I have, sorry.
Any questions for Wes?
Wes, this was tabled because we wanted to get a little bit of information on participation in a future secondary access.
Correct. So, yeah, so we've discussed that with the applicant. Sorry about that. And this is, as you recall, this is their proposed layout of their development here. So we felt like right now there is no second access. Everything has to come along White Dome Drive over to River Road. And so in visiting with them, the proposal is to allow these three subdivisions, this one, the next one, and then this future one here, to go forward. Well, enter in a development agreement with them that if by the time this one develops out and is platted, any of these additional, then a second access would be required, or if they go into any of these other areas to develop, then that second access would be required. So they could develop these three before a second access, but at that time, or with the development into these other areas, they would provide the second access. The second access either being Interchange 5 or coming through Desert Canyons over to Desert Canyons Parkway. Right now, the city is in the hopes of trying to get the funding to be able to do an Interchange 5, but this is just kind of a fail-safe in case nothing happens there. We'd provide that at some point at the end of these three subdivisions. Thank you.
And so I've got a question for the applicant, and then Wes, you can weigh in as well. It appears based on the plans that are submitted that the driveways are 20 feet deep. That tends to be a problem. First of all, let me back up. Is there going to be a separate HOA for this development?
Excuse me, Brett Burgess, applicant. Yes, there will be an HOA for each one of these on their own. Part of our thinking, speaking with Wes on some of the street sections and the sidewalk, we're trying to get the streets within the subdivision public. Private streets can, as you guys know, can kind of be a little bit of a nightmare. Right now, to get this to work, the private streets, we have a smaller cross section, so that's kind of why they were proposed. But we've been working with Wes at trying to figure out a new cross section for that, and that's our intent. Obviously, the trail out front, I'd like to have dual trails on both sides, actually. I'd like to have one going into that park if we can make it work. Just some issues we've been working with Wes on as far as that goes. The driveways, yeah, I believe they are proposed at 20, and that's another, I guess, reason for the one side to not have the sidewalk, because that should give us a little bit more room.
I guess I have.
Oh, sorry.
I guess I have a concern with that. Are you going to allow parking in the driveways, or are you going to require vehicles to be in the garage?
I mean, they do have a garage, but I guess they would probably be allowed to.
Here's
park
my
out
concern.
front.
You got a Suburban, or even a lot of trucks now are over 20 feet.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a sidewalk, at least that gives us a little bit of a buffer. I mean, that's still technically not allowed, but where there's no sidewalk, then you've got a vehicle that's potentially hanging out into the right-of-way, and I think that creates some significant concerns.
Well, and we did, because we were actually talking about this today about noon, we did figure out that we could get 2 sidewalks to work within the cross-section, right? So we can get that to work. Part of it, too, is just, as we were just discussing, and this was just us kind of brainstorming, with the 2 sidewalks, and then just kind of how we have garages on them all, and they're kind of close together, you just effectively have a ton of concrete there anyway. So we figured if it's for pedestrians, the backyards are kind of nice to actually walk down. You can have your dog, you can have your kids there without worrying about vehicles. But if we need to put sidewalk on both sides, we can make it work. I believe that has to go private though, right?
Right now it's private because the cross-section doesn't meet a city standard. Like Brett said, we're trying to come up with a new standard that's maybe a little narrower cross-section that would allow for that,
So I guess short and long answer is yes, we're able to put sidewalks on both sides. If we do at this point where the city doesn't have a cross-section approved, we'd probably request for them to be private. But I would love to work on them being public. I think that it's a better thing for the city and community to have them public, but we're willing to go private too. So. Hopefully that didn't make the decision harder. Sorry. I guess at this point where an ordinance doesn't exist, I would hope that we could, related to that issue, know that we are proposing private streets with a dual sidewalk, but if there's the ability before we record the final plat to get a modified cross-section from the city that allows them to be public with dual sidewalks, we would change them to public. That's maybe pretty long for a motion, but we'd be willing to do that.
I was just going to say, Brett, that motion, come on, dude.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay. But Adam, so if the council wants to approve this, and Paula, she can weigh in. So subject to a development agreement for secondary access after these 3, after this plat, or where the 3 plats are done, and then a dual sidewalk, is that where we're going?
I think so. What's the council comfortable with?
I'll make a comment on this. One thing I've always thought about with the South Block in certain areas and things like that, we're just, as we plan for the future for St. George, we want the communities to be nice, places that people want to retain and keep 30 years from now. If we are going that narrow, then that does seem, I've been in those places where other cars are always hanging out the streets and things like that. So I think you bring up a good point, Adam, on the shorter driveways. That's just a comment, that I think, as I think about that. So we're just, we're to bring density in, we're sacrificing, the wider streets, I guess, and that's, just comments.
The only, argument I would have about that, though, is like wider streets don't always equal safer streets. So more narrow streets are actually shown to people slow down. It's more narrow, there's kids present, you slow down. The wider the street gets, the faster people drive. So I think that's part of the conversation that our city staff's having is in these neighborhoods, can we narrow the streets up to provide not only an opportunity for developers, to maybe put more trails outside and around their subdivision and have the streets be more narrow so they're using the land in a different way, the same piece of land, but also to slow the speeds down on our neighborhood streets. Is that correct, Wes? That's part of the conversation?
Yeah, and some of the other conversation is, by virtue of allowing this kind of density here, and on the next plat, you can see that you have a driveway almost, boom, boom, boom driveways. It's not like a standard single-family residential subdivision. So by virtue of allowing that density, you're basically regulating that you can't park on the street because you'll be parking in somebody's driveway. There just is not enough room between driveways to park a car. And so that's why we felt like, we could possibly narrow these down because you don't need parking because the driveways restrict parking. And so really it's just for passage of vehicles back and forth. And so that's why we've kind of gone to this thought of maybe reducing that cross-section.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely helps.
Know that
portion. Yeah, it does. In fact, I drove around, in some development similar to this, where they are private streets, similar cross-section. I drove around this week, and in one of them, there was no parking on the streets within that development, even though it's private. And again, it was because the driveways were they came so frequent that it really limited the parking. The other one, they did have parking, but that's because the road was only loaded on one side, and so they tended to park all on that side that wasn't loaded, and it kind of restricted the road maybe too much. And so that's something, we'll have to look at. But that's why we felt like we could narrow the cross-section, because really parking's not going to be allowed because of the frequency of the driveways. And to be honest with you, we probably ought to look at, right now the PD allows for the 20-foot setback to the garage. I did drive around, took some video just to kind of see, and there are large trucks that hang, out, and that's just, so it's something I was going to get with John and look at that and say, hey, maybe we need to see what we can do about this, because both of those developments I went through had trucks and larger cars that did extend almost out into the right-of-way, and so maybe we went to a 20-foot setback, but maybe that's just too close. I don't know.
The reason I have a comment on this is just because I was out in Hurricane. I was in a development that had a private street that had the 20-foot setbacks on the homes, and with all the trucks sitting in there, and it had the narrow streets, and it just, I don't know, it just wasn't great. There, that it is a concern. But we do meet ordinance. It does meet the ordinance.
Any other questions, council?
Wes, I do have a question for you, and I may have asked this last time, I'm not sure, but on the access, for having only one access in, does it comply with the fire code?
So, what they've done in the past fire, as long as the development has a planned road that provides a second access, they've allowed that to go forward, and as we discussed this internally, we said, well, that's fine, but let's set a trigger date when that access needs to be, second access needs to be provided.
And that was my next question, though, but that's usually with a date that we expect that second access to come in, right?
Well, that or a phase of a development or something like that. And so we've done it both ways. This one we chose to just do it on a phase of a development. Our real hope, as I visited with Cameron, is to get that interchange 5 built, and get that funding. But we do need a trigger to, if that doesn't happen, to provide that second access. Yeah.
Can I comment on the second access issue? So I guess the thoughts are, Wes brought this up, and this is one of the reasons that we pushed this to this meeting as opposed to 2 weeks ago. Part of our thoughts on this, obviously you guys know that I've broken off and I'm kind of working on my own thing, and this is kind of where I'm starting. But beyond that, we were talking last week about a second access pretty quickly, which we understand and we need. But if we get this interchange built and we go build an access road over to Desert Canyons right now to exit 6, we're going to start inviting traffic on a paved road there right now, and then we're going to have to shut it down to go build the interchange. And so I guess part of the question and concern was just like, let's kind of see how this interchange percolates, let's get it going, and by the time we get these, honestly, by the time I get these 3 going and done, I'm going to probably want that second access for my residents at 50% build out on these. I mean, it's quite a few residents to just have one thing. Plus, when and if Ed gets his commercial stuff going, I'd rather have my residents be able to drive on a frontage road over there rather than go all the way back to River Road on the freeway over to Ed's stuff, because these people that are moving in here and the current residents are going to want and need services. And I think what Ed and his crew are proposing out there, it's going to be something, and it's going to be nice for the residents rather than not having any amenities out there. So it's more just trying to see how the timing works with Interchange 5, and this kind of allows us to get about 12 months down the road. If we need to go at 12 months, we talked about that a little bit, if we went to units or a date. I mean, I'm kind of good either way. We just wanted to make sure and see kind of what happened with Exit 5 so we can get our big, heavy trucks there, really knock that Interchange 5 out. And I guess any contractor, I don't know how it goes with the feds and their cash and money. I'm sure it needs to be bid out and those types of things. So if we're not successful in bidding it, anybody building that's going to have a hard time having traffic through there with an oiled road that they're just going to need to tear out to kind of get this done. So that was kind of the thought process through it. So.
And hopefully, Brett, it was communicated that our concern is really a public safety concern, that you're getting a lot of homes out there and they're all coming in on the one access. And just as we required of your neighbors on both sides, Desert Color and Desert Canyons, we felt it was important to at least have a plan as to how and when the secondary access is built. And so that's what we felt we needed to accomplish. So thank you for working with us on that.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Council, any more questions? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for South Desert Townhomes, a 132 lot residential subdivision located at approximately White Dome Drive in 2500 East in the Southern Hills development.
With Paula, will you help with the conditions?
On the condition that they enter into a development agreement with the city for the secondary access within a phased time frame.
So moved.
And what about the dual sidewalks?
Oh, what did you want to do on the? I'm not sure what the decision was on that.
Where I brought up the concern, not allowing on-street parking, I certainly think that helps. I think it's something the HOA is going to have to watch closely.
So you're saying that dual sidewalks is our preference?
Wes, what do you think from staff? I think maybe we could live with it either way. I think sidewalks on both sides is always better, but what does it do then to the overall cross-section?
I think it would meet either way with the cross-section we're proposing. We discussed it, like Brett said today, and the one we're thinking of bringing to you for approval would work with sidewalks on both sides, or if you felt comfortable with just sidewalk on one side. It'll work either way from what we discussed today.
Can I speak? And when we looked at it, we had the room to do either. We were just trying to work with Wes to get it public. So even if it's conditioned upon the engineering department being okay with the street cross section, we're fine. And that very well could be dual sidewalks. It was trying to get that cross section to work.
So basically, council, that would be up to you.
So with the dual sidewalk, then and I think our interest and desire to make it public versus private, do we run into any issues as far as the width now if we got sidewalks on both sides?
No, again, right now it doesn't meet, like I said, a standard cross-section, but based on our discussion of what staff is thinking, I think it'll fit within that cross-section that we're going to bring to you and propose. And so the dual sidewalks would meet that cross-section. They were just saying that they felt like maybe this would be a better alternative to then maybe having a sidewalk all the way through there, allow residents to be able to walk up and down through the middle there.
That's a question for you, Adam. Do we, as a city, want these public streets when they're smaller and have the driveways, or do we want to keep it private?
Well, if they're smaller, that's less for the city to maintain in the long run. I do think the trend is to smaller cross sections, to less asphalt. I think I'm anticipating even some state legislation that would push in this direction. So, You know, with, again, not having on-street parking, it certainly makes this one much more feasible with the reduced asphalt width.
So would you say that we just want to maybe look at in the future deepening the driveway so we avoid hanging out into the smaller streets?
Right, I think staff needs to look at that for the future and just make sure that we're not creating problems.
Or we could look at shortening trucks. I don't know what we can do on the St. George level.
I like that.
So we're still in the motion phase. I prefer, from a public safety perspective, I like the 2 sidewalks on both sides of the street.
I think we should leave it, like Brett suggested, we could leave it to engineering.
I'm good with that.
For public safety.
It would probably be better at this point to, since it is a preliminary plat, we're vesting with lot configurations and density and things like that. I think the council should, I think it would be appropriate to specify what your preference is, and then engineering, it sounds like can handle that either way.
I'd agree with Vardell on the dual sidewalks.
Was that a second? A motion and a second?
Brian made the motion. Who made the second?
I will. I'll second it.
Brian, you're good with all of those?
Yes.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Vardell. All in favor, starting with Greg.
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, the next item is a request to approve a preliminary plat for a 123-lot residential subdivision called Southern View PD. Again, it's located in the White Dome development along Southern Hills Parkway. Number of lots is 123, density is 7.63 dwelling units an acre, zone is PDR. Again, the applicant is Development Solutions Group. So the last one we looked at was right here to the north. This one is right here to the south. And again, the one change in your packet is they had all their access locations coming out on this road right here. However, we've worked with them to get an additional access right here onto White Dome Drive. And so that's a change from yours. And then another change we looked at was possibly going to a roundabout right here. They do get into the commercial, and we're just trying to figure out the best way. And so we looked at a possible roundabout that right there. So we just hatched that in for now, or kind of faded that in to see if that's. And the reason is we're trying to reduce. If this is going to be a commercial area, we'd like to reduce people using that as a road to get through the subdivision. That really it should just be a road for these residents to come and then come back out, and not a cut through. So that was kind of an option we looked at as a possible way to, unless you live there, deter individuals from using that as a cut through to get to White Dome Drive. So that was just the change from yours. We're not totally sure we do a roundabout yet, but that's kind of what we're thinking. Right now, we're just going to right there on that one. And the reason, just so you know, the reason, so like I said, right now we have trails, and Brett's been gracious to work with us on this. Right now we have a trail on the south side. The trail was built long ago as to the west of us developed. They have now dedicated that area right there to the city for a future park. And so that has kind of changed it. And we don't have a trail on the north side to the west here, but Brett's going to work with us and see if he can come up with a trail both to extend this along the south side and then allow a trail on the north side if he can make it work, so that residents, as they come down, they can catch the trail and ride right over to the park right there. His residents can. So we're hoping we can make that work. He's been gracious enough to see if he can get that to work, so he'd have dual trails on either side of that road, which is kind of unique. That's all I have.
Questions for Wes on this one, or the applicant on this one?
Do we have the same issues with this one on width of street and sidewalks?
No, this one they actually meet. They do have and they have sidewalks on both sides. It was only the other one. This is when they'll have sidewalks on both sides, and they meet a city standard right now. If we narrow it up, they may come back and say, hey, can we use that cross section? Because again, the frequency of the driveways will then regulate parking on the street. You really won't have much parking on the street.
What about an agreement for secondary access?
So we'll tie this subdivision, the last one we did, and I think it's PA or PD, it's area, I can't see, 2. We'll do 10, 1, and 2. Those will be the subdivisions we'll tie to the agreement that it needs to be, the second access needs to be provided before they're developed out and platted. So it'll tie those 3 subdivisions to that agreement. Anything else would then trigger if they came in and developed anything else would trigger it, or finishing out those 3 subdivisions. If you're okay with
Thanks.
that.
Council ready for motion?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Southern View PD, a 123-lot residential subdivision located on the south side of White Dome Drive at approximately 2500 East.
Second.
Motion by Bardell,
Oh.
seconded.
Subject to the development agreement?
Yes, thank you.
Second stands.
Motion by Bardell, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't need a roll call vote on that last one, but we got one anyway. I don't have any appointments to boards or commissions. Council, Bardell, any reports?
I'm going to defer to Danielle on the meeting that we had this afternoon.
Greg, any reports?
No reports.
I'll wait.
Brian?
I'll wait to report.
No.
Jimmy?
No.
Danielle?
Just one, put on your calendars, Friday, November 12th from 7 to 10 p.m. The St. George Art Museum is having a fun activity called Doc Art. So they're asking doctors in the community who are also artists to donate art. And it will be a fundraiser. There will be a dessert bar and beverages, and you can purchase tickets in advance. So more information to come on that, but it should be fun. That's it, Mayor.
Danielle, will you have Emily add that to the council calendar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I don't have anything, so I am ready for a motion to adjourn.
So
We all want to stay, but I don't.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Bardell, seconded by Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hey, council, thanks.
Thank you. Get better.
I will.